I advise members that they are welcome to use the mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode and all the devices are muted. This includes members' tablet devices. They can connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi. We are also obliged to declare any financial or other relevant interests which might reasonably be thought by others to influence our approach to the matter under consideration. Any members who have interest to declare in relation to today's business should do so now or when the particular matter arises in the meeting. Any interest to declare? Item 2, apologies. We have an apology from Emma Rogan and an apology. Sorry, we don't have. My apologies for that.
I'm apologetic. Like the Prime Minister, she's unapologetic.
We have an apology from Robin Newton, and also just to advise members that Doug, Sinead, Gemma, Rachel and Sinead are joining us by Starleaf. Okay, and obviously in accordance with the Standing Order 1156, the vote of Robin Newton has been delegated to myself, and Rachel has delegated her vote to Sinead if she is absent for any part of the meeting. Agenda item 3, the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 16th are at pages 5 to 17 of the meeting pack. Are we content that these minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting? Content? Thank you. Item 4, matters arising. An email from the Department of Justice, a request for an extension to response deadline. The meeting on the 16th of December, the committee agreed to request information on the outcome of its meeting due to take place on the 16th between the authors of the report, management staff and trade unions to review progress to deliver the recommendations of the review of support services for operational prison staff. Department advised that the meeting did not take place as planned and has been rescheduled for the 14th of January, following which the information requested will be provided. The relevant correspondence can be found at pages 19 to 20 of the meeting pack, and it's for members to note the position in relation to that issue. Item 2, correspondence from the Minister of Justice on the Northern Ireland Prison Service additional precautionary steps due to the Omicron variant. Pages 21 to 22 of the meeting pack. There's a letter from the Minister of Justice which we received on the 20th of December advising of the additional precautionary steps that have been put in place in the Northern Ireland Prison Service due to the Omicron variant. This correspondence was emailed to members on the 21st of December, and it is to note the correspondence unless there's any further information or clarification that is required. Item 3. Correspondence from the Minister of Justice on the Justice Sexual Offences and Trafficking Victims Bill and the PSNI resources. Following the oral evidence session with the PSNI on the Justice Bill, the committee wrote to the Department regarding resources for the PSNI to ensure effective implementation of this bill and other pieces of legislation, including the Domestic Abuse Act and Stalking Bill. The Minister has indicated that decisions on the prioritisations of resources allocated to the PSNI are an operational matter for the Chief Constable, and where pressures arise, these can be considered through the normal budgetary processes. To date, the PSNI has not made a bid for additional resources in respect of any of the bills, but it is open to develop proportionate business cases to request additional funding where new legislative provisions create wholly new and unavoidable additional resource requirements that cannot be met through the normal budgetary process. The response is at page 3 and 4 of the table pack, and is to members to note or if there's any other further information that we require. But the only one caveat I would put in there is that we will be considering the matter as part of the scrutiny of the draft budget 2022-2025 later on this month and into the next month. The correspondence will be added to the electronic bill of the pack and also of the web page. Okay, I have one item 4, which is in relation to the Sexual Offences and Trafficking Bill draft amendments, and obviously is to place on record the outcome of the committee's discussion in closed session on possible amendments to the Protection from Stalking Bill. And if Kristen, so that we get it accurately, it's left to me that something will be missed. Okay. Christine?
Just for the record, the amendments that the committee are going to look at include an amendment to Clause 1 to include a form of words that unequivocally removes the banter defence from both Clause 1 and Clause 2, an amendment to introduce a new offence of cyber flashing, an amendment to Clause 3 to make it clear that payments may be something other than financial, amendments to Clause 16 to provide to extend statutory support for victims of trafficking, and there's a number of strands to the amendments, including provision of support following positive determination and also during appeal of a negative determination. An amendment to place a duty on the Department of Justice to bring forward slavery and trafficking risk orders within a certain period of time. An amendment to widen the proposed amendment on the scope of abuse of trust to specifically include those in a position of trust with young people who would not be included in a religious or supporting description. Amendments regarding the provision of guidance, training, data collection and reporting for Part 1 of the bill. An amendment to remove the defence of reasonable chastisement, and also an amendment to the 2015 Act to amend the statutory defence to protect victims of criminal exploitation, including persons convicted of offences related to Class A drugs, so to change from Class B to Class A drugs. And that's the amendments I have. Okay,
thank you, Christine. And the text of the amendments will be considered at the meeting on Monday, the 17th, all being well. And again, I place on record our appreciation and thanks to Stephanie from the Bill Office in regards to all the work that she has and will do in relation to this. It is very much appreciated. And also, as previously agreed, we will write to the Minister of Justice advising her of the amendments the committee has agreed to consider. It brings us to item agenda number 5, which is the Protection from Stalking Bill consideration of the revised departmental amendments. You'll find that at pages 25 to 42 of the meeting pack. The Department of Justice wrote to the committee on the 9th of December, advising that the Minister was now prepared to supplement the Department's amendment to the Protection from Stalking Bill with the Committee's addition in relation to guidance, training and reporting, and had instructed officials to engage with the Legislative Council to draft the revised amendments. The Department of Justice has now provided the text for the revised amendments and indicated that there are a couple of minor divergences from the Committee's requested text in relation to the information required to be reported on the stalking protection orders and interim orders. The reasons for this are outlined in the letter, and it's whether or not the members are content with to support the draft amendments put forward by the Department, or whether they wish to submit any views or comments or require any further information or clarification at this stage. Content? Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 6 in SL1 in the County Court Fees Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2021, and also item 7 and SL1, the Magistrates Courts Fees Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2021. We'll take these two items together. You'll find the relevant information at pages 44 to 63 of the meeting pack. At our meeting on the 9th of December in 2021, the Committee considered the proposals for 2 statutory rules relating to an increase in the limit of the small claims jurisdiction and corresponding references to this within the County Court rules. The rules which are subject to negative resolution will increase the jurisdiction of the County Court from the current level of £3,000 to £5,000 and make corresponding amendments to references in the County Court rules to reflect this increase. The proposal followed the outcome of a public consultation increasing the general jurisdiction of the County Courts in Northern Ireland. The Department's powers to do this can only be exercised after consultation with the Lady Chief Justice, and the Committee agreed to defer consideration of the proposed rules pending receipt of further information from the Department on the time frame for the consultation with the Lady Chief Justice. The Department has advised that formal consultation with the Lady Chief Justice will not take place until the business case has been approved by the Department of Finance, which is expected to be later this month. The Minister has, however, written informally about the increase, and in her response, the Lady Chief Justice highlighted issues in relation to capacity at the District Judge, Statutory Office, Officer, Judicial Tier to meet business needs. However, the Department understands that this does not specifically relate to the increase in the small claims jurisdiction, which will not affect the case numbers within the overall District Judge jurisdiction, which remains at £10,000. But it is in respect of the wider business needs, which, if necessary, will be the subject of a separate business case. And is to seek the views of the members of whether, in the view of the additional information provided, we are content with the two proposals for the statutory rules, or whether we wish to submit any further comments or views, or require any further information or clarification. Sinead Ennis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a massive problem with this, and I'm not opposed to it in principle, by any means. But I would have some concerns around proceeding without the approval of the Lady Chief Justice. So, you know, and again, I don't think we're in any great rush to do this. And I don't think, you know, if we do decide to defer a judgment today, I don't think that would have a massive impact. But it certainly would be my opinion that we should wait for that formal consultation with the Lady Chief Justice to be carried out, so that we can see the conclusion of that.
Okay. Members content with that approach?
Great.
Agreed.
Right.
Thank you, Sinead. Agenda item 8, SL1, the Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of live links and legal proceedings order, Northern Ireland 2022. And you'll find that at pages 65 to 102 of the meeting pack. The Department of Justice is proposing to make a statutory rule which will be subject to the draft affirmative resolution procedure under powers conferred by Section 90 of the Coronavirus Act 2020. The rule will have two purposes. Firstly, to allow a coroner to hold an inquest into a death in prison caused by natural injury without a jury, and secondly, to allow courts and statutory tribunals to receive evidence wholly or in part through the use of audio or video live links beyond the 24th of March 2022. The Department has indicated that that it is extending provisions which already are in existence to permit the continuation of the court and tribunal business, while protecting the right of access to justice for the public at a time when the pandemic continues to challenge the operation of the justice system in a way that minimises or reduces the risk of harm to court users or the public. The Committee has previously been advised that the Department was considering the inclusion of the extension of the live link provisions in the legislative consent motion for the Police Crime Sentencing and Court Bill. However, the timescales involved proved challenging. A two-stage legislative approach was therefore proposed, whereby the provisions would initially be extended by subordinate legislation prior to the development of an Assembly bill in the next mandate to make permanent provision for the use of audio and video links. The meeting on the 30th of November, the Committee considered information provided by the Department of Justice advising of a 4-week targeted consultation on the proposals to extend the provision of the Coronavirus Act 2020, permitting remote hearings by live or audio links beyond the current sunset clause and date of the 25th of March 2022. The Committee sought further information on this exercise and details of any data collected on the use and impact of audio and visual links in the courts, and the Department's response is at pages 86 to 89 of the meeting pack. The Department has not responded to the Committee's request for details on any other provisions in the Coronavirus Act within the Department's remit that will end in March 2022, which may also need to be extended, although the proposal for the rule includes the extension of provisions for coroners to hold an inquest without a jury in certain circumstances. The Department has indicated that there is no intention for these provisions to be subsequently made permanent. And just to seek the views of members on whether you're content with the proposal of the statutory rule or whether you require any further information or clarification, and also to ask to seek agreement of the members to ask the Department to confirm if there are any other provisions in the Coronavirus Act within the Department's remit that will end in March 2022, which may also need to be extended. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 9, the Misuse of Drugs Regulations Northern Ireland 2002, the legislative amendment to tighten restrictions on GHB, GBL and related compounds. You'll find the relevant papers at pages 104 to 176. The Department of Justice has advised of the intention of the Home Office to lay an affirmative order to amend the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971 to tighten restrictions on GHB, GBL and related compounds across the UK, and a statutory instrument amending the 2001 regulations in England, Scotland and Wales. In order to maintain alignment with controlled drugs legislation, similar amendments to the Misuse of Drugs Regulation Northern Ireland 2002 are required, and this is the responsibility of the Department of Health, who's bringing forward a statutory rule. The Department of Justice has a role to play in the enforcement of drug legislation, both within the general population and within prisons, and via the Organised Crime Task Force Drugs subgroup, which facilitates engagement between statutory partners on all enforcement activity. It therefore has an interest in future reclassification of these compounds and the tougher enforcement penalties which those found in unlawful possession will face. The Department has indicated that the Home Office will issue a circular aimed at law enforcement agencies, setting out the effects of these measures in due course, and it is intended that a similar circular will be provided to Northern Ireland equivalent bodies. And it's to ask the members to note the position regarding the tightening restrictions on the GHB, GBL and related compounds unless there is any further information or clarification required. Thank you. Agenda item 10, Domestic Abuse and Civil Proceedings Act Northern Ireland 2021, implementations of Section 28, the Domestic Abuse Waiver for Legal Aid. You'll find this at pages 179 to 246. The Committee has considered updates on the implementation of the Domestic Abuse Waiver for Legal Aid, set to be commenced in February of this year on a number of occasions. As part of its deliberations, the Committee requested information on the timescale for the completion of the outlined business case, which will consider the options for the evidential test to be applied by the Legal Services Agency and a paper trail in relation to the Department's exploration and conclusion regarding the potential repercussive risk. At our meeting on the 9th of December 2021, the Committee considered correspondence from the Department advising that the outlined business case, considering options for the evidential test be applied by Legal Services Agency, was currently being prepared for submission for approval, and it would not be appropriate to share the document at this stage. The Department did provide a copy of the strategic outline case, which documents the exploration of the repercussive effect and letters summarising the legal advice obtained on this. The Committee agreed to request a range of further information and noted that the Department was due to provide another update in January, which would include information on the communication strategy to raise awareness of the waiver. The Department has now provided a further update which indicates that the outline business case continues to be reviewed internally, and once this process is completed, it will be submitted to the Department of Finance for approval. The Department has also engaged with the PSNI, the PPS and the Court Service to consider the evidence which these bodies can provide, and has received assistance on and has received the assistance of the Legal Aid Agency in England and Wales. There has also been some engagement with the Housing Executive and the Department of Health on what information they may supply, and it is proposed that there will be engagement with the voluntary sector later in the year in tandem with another project. Following legal advice, the Department does not now anticipate that there will be any need to revise the rules for contributions, with the intention being to calculate them on the same basis as those for the existing non-molestation order waiver. The Department will provide a further update following the response from the Department of Finance on the outline business case. And following that parable, it's to ask the members to note the updated information provided, unless we have any further information or clarification. And clearly, members, this continues to go on and on and on, and we don't seem to be getting to an end point. And I'm not surprised, Sinead, that you want to come in on this point. Sinead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, quite a lot of information that tells us nothing, and it's just so frustrating to see this being coloured around language and all sorts of, taking in the credibility of organisations who no doubt are offering good services and being used as cover in this. And I was surprised to see reference to England and Wales Legal Aid Agency, when in fact it was the first obstacle to this was the repercussive effect that those agencies may lift costs according to our legislation, and now they're the go-to agencies for advice on it. So we're going round in circles here, and I really think we need to put pressure on the department to find out their timeline. And is it normal practice, Chair, that a committee wouldn't have access to an outline business case? Are there sensitivities in that? Perhaps there are, and maybe that's reasonable, but I don't think it's reasonable at this stage that it's been set out for such a long time. So I'd really appreciate, Chair, if we as a committee could go back and really pin the department down on this. I would just like detail at this stage.
Yep, okay, and I think too the other issue is that the department will provide us information on the communication strategy to raise awareness in the waiver, as they had indicated in a letter dated the 12th of October last year. So if we, along with what Sinead, you have mentioned, if we could also get that information. Also, it'd be interesting to note, and it was almost like in a throwaway line when they talked about they had engaged with other organisations such as the Housing Executive and the Department of Health, and then they said that they may supply that information with their engagement with the voluntary sector later in the year in tandem with another project. I just wonder what it was that they are intending to align this with. So maybe if we could write to the department along those lines with those elements, unless there's any other addition to be added to that, or members' content. Thank you. That brings us to item 11, the Domestic Abuse and Civil Proceedings Act, Northern Ireland 2021, the implementation of Section 29, the proposals as to the availability of civil legal aid. You'll find that at pages 248 to 253. And the Department has provided an update on progress of the implementation in regards to the Section 29 of the Domestic Abuse and Civil Proceedings Act, which requires the Department to lay a report in the Assembly by the end of February 2023 on the Department's proposals for either making regulations under the Access of Justice Northern Ireland Order 2003 or taking some different course of action from the prescribed purpose set out in the Act. To inform members that a project team has been established and a ministerial approval obtained for a business case to publicly tender for an independent external consultant to develop an assessment of the currently available support and the barriers faced by victims. And the Department intends to hold public consultation on the findings and the Department's proposed response later in the year. And it's for members to note unless there's any other information or clarification sought. Agenda item 12, Northern Ireland Audit Office report on mental health in the criminal justice system. Update on the progress to implement the recommendations. You'll find that at pages 255 to 357. At the meeting on the 6th of May, the committee considered an update on the progress to implement the recommendations in the Northern Ireland Office report on the mental health in the criminal justice system and requested a range of further information. Having considered this information at our meeting on the 10th of June, the committee requested a further update in 6 months' time. The Department has provided this update and highlighted a number of key developments that have been introduced since the last update, including a mental health and criminal justice dashboard, which will facilitate monitoring of available data. And that's for members to note the update unless there's any further information or clarification sought. Item 13, the Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service Digital Strategy 2021 to 26, and that's at pages 359 to 396. The Minister of Justice has provided a copy of the final version of the Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service 5-year digital strategy, which sets out how it will utilise technology to enhance its services and to improve the ways of working. A range of key digital actions is included in the document, which the Minister intends to publish on the 17th of January of this year. And again, it's for members to note the digital strategy unless we have any further information or clarification. Thank you. Agenda item 14, the statutory authority for a fee for a certified sealed copy of a grant in non-contentious probate business area. The information is contained in pages 398 to 405. At our meeting on the 30th of November, the committee considered the information provided by the Department about the issue in relation to the statutory authority to charge a fee of £14 for a certified sealed copy of a grant within the non-contentious probate business area, which has resulted in the Northern Ireland Court and Tribunal Service ceasing to charge that fee and instead applying a fee of £6, which is covered by legislation. This is an interim measure until the non-contentious probate fees order can be updated, and the Department is also engaging with the Department of Finance on what potential redress arrangements may be required. The Department has now provided the further information requested, including when the court service began charging the fee of £14, on what basis it believed it had the authority to do so, and how many cases are involved, and the timescale for agreeing the position regarding potential redress arrangements. The Department has also indicated the estimated cost of refunding court users from 2015-16 to 2022-21 would be approximately $124,000, and it's to ask members to note the position unless we require any further information or clarification. The only point I would make in relation to that is I would take that the amount that the Department is saying of the 124k is a basic standard calculation of the difference between the two amounts with the number of people, but what it doesn't take into account is probably the time, the cost of all of the labour and everything else. So I suspect that the 124,000 is a fairly conservative estimate as to the total cost of this oversight that has taken place. No comment, then we'll go to item...
Chair?
Yep.
Chair, sorry. I think that's a fair point, Chair, you've just made. And is it worth us asking the Department if they have an estimate of writing this wrong, if that's their intention?
Yep, and I do think that we do need to have some more in terms of what has been agreed between them and the Department of Finance in regards to the redress and the timescale. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Item 15, the Committee Forward Work Programme for January and February. That's at pages 407 to 417. The Department has provided us a list of items of business it would like the Committee to consider at our meetings in February, and the Department has also asked to schedule an additional written paper for the meeting on the 27th of January, outlining why the court rules in relation to Domestic Abuse and Civil Proceedings Act Northern Ireland 2021 will not be progressed. The Committee has agreed to hold a joint evidence session with the Committee of Health on the responses from the Department of Justice and the Department of Health to the Regulatory and Quality Improvement Authority report of a review of the services for vulnerable persons detained in Northern Ireland prisons. The Committee had also agreed to schedule a briefing on the role of the Independent Monitoring Board in relation to the care and supervision units in Northern Ireland Prison Service following the publication of the Sir report on the review into the operations of the CSU, and to consider the report and the sustainable dates or suitable dates in February will be identified for these. So I think it's just to assure members that those will be figured and timetabled in February. And the Committee will also need to consider the Department of Justice draft budget of 2022-25. The Committee for Finance intends to coordinate the responses from all statutory committees and has asked for these by the 18th of February. Departmental officials are due to attend our meeting on the 20th of January to outline details of the Department of Justice draft budget for 2022-25 and to assist consideration and inform the response. The Committee may wish to hear directly from the main justice organisations on their budget allocations and implications. And so, on that basis, it would be to seek your agreement to schedule the work items requested by the Department of Finance, by the Department of Justice in February 2022, with the caveat that, given there are 8 written papers scheduled for our meeting on the 24th of February, as well as an oral evidence session, some of the papers may need to defer to the meeting on the 3rd of March if other priority work items arise that need to be considered. Agreed? Agreed. Also to agree to schedule the additional written paper requested by the Department for the meeting on the 27th of January. Agreed? And to seek the agreement of members to schedule oral evidence sessions with the PSNI, Northern Ireland Prison Service, the Youth Justice Agency, Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service and the Probation Board in late January, early February on the 2022-25 draft budget allocations. Agreed? Agreed. Just also to remind members that the Committee had previously written to the Justice non-departmental public bodies to request information on the likely I'm having difficulty with this word today, implications of the pressures arising from the reductions proposed as part of the information gathering process in the development of the draft budget. So the Department has now advised that the NDPBs of their indicative allocations for the budget period, and it might be helpful if we were to ask those NDPPs to provide us with an updated information on the implications of the draft budget allocations on their organisation, so that could help to inform the Committee's response. Agreed?
Great.
There's one other issue in terms of our agenda for the next few months. Obviously, we're heading speedily towards the end of this mandate, but one thing that we haven't been able to do as a committee, and it has been obviously because of COVID has also been a difficulty, but it was that we had talked about a visit to the cybercrime suite to see what happens there. Our members agreed that we still try, if possible, to see if that is doable within the time scale of this mandate, but also taking into account the current situation in relation to the coronavirus. But obviously we will be looking at February, late February, probably early March at the very earliest. Happy enough? Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
So does that mean we get to meet the Cybermen?
It just means you'll take your mobile phone with you and make sure that it's working. Agenda item 16 is correspondence. There are 15 items of correspondence in pages 420 to 595, and I'm only going to draw your attention to one of the items, and then if members have any other comment or any other issue that they wish to raise in relation to correspondence, quite happy to do so. It's item 16.9 at pages 446 to 449, and it's a response from the Psni regarding the implementation of the recommendation on the Stalking report on effective penalty enforcement, a review of the impact of current fine default strategy and services for which it has responsibility. There's been a prolonged absence. It has resulted in delayed progress. However, work has commenced under a number of work streams, and the PSNI anticipates that a more comprehensive update will be available in March of 2022. And if members are agreed, we would seek a request for a further update in March 2022, at which time an update on the implementations of the recommendation that fall to the Department of Justice and the Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service is due. Agreed? Sinead? Ennis? Sorry, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just in the correspondence pack. It's good to see that we have the information on the call for views and the draft strategy, and obviously one of them being the violence against women and girls. And I think it's very timely, given what we witnessed in Tullamore in Offaly last night and the brutal murder of Psni Murphy. So I think there's a lot of anger in social media in response to this, and it's just in terms of the departments. I know obviously TEO are taking the lead, but Justice are partners in this as well. And I know the call for views is running to March 2022, and I'd be very keen just to understand and to get probably a regular update just on how that's progressing, because I think we want to be sure that we're getting a very broad brush in terms of opinion, both public and obviously there will be statutory agencies involved in that as well. I would like to see universities and schools involved in that too. So it's just really to draw members' attention to that, and if we can get some clarification, and certainly I'd appreciate, and I think the committee would as well, just regular updates just as to how that's progressing in terms of the call for views, and if there's anything else we need to do in terms of raising the profile of that.
Yeah, thank you, Sinead, and obviously it was a horrific murder, and my wife and I spent some time on holiday in the past in Tullamore, and I've walked that particular canal. It's a lovely part of the Republic, and but obviously what happened last night was absolutely horrendous, and I think members will agree for us to write to the department for us to be, I think what you're really saying is to be kept up to date in terms of where the department and their part in this is in relation to developing this. So agreed? Agreed.
Yeah, I think, Chair, just really we want to make sure that it gets maximum exposure, so people know that this call for views is there and it's live.
Yes.
Because as I said, there's lots of feedback on social media, but you want to harness that in a constructive way, and this is a good avenue for people to be able to feed in their ideas and their views.
I suppose obviously it'll be put up on the Assembly's social media pages and so on. We could do that.
Yeah, we'll also tweet out from our committee
Yeah.
to all our contacts as well, but we can ask the department for an update, say in a couple of weeks' time, of the response they're getting, and whether on what types of organisations, and whether there are any gaps or anything. And we can encourage other committees to try and tweet out as well, the likes of education or whatever. We can ask them as well.
Okay, thank you. Sinead, Bradley? No.
Thanks. No, Chair. I've dropped my hand, but yes,
Okay.
just to concur with that. And I was going to ask if we could use our social media as a committee, but Christine beat me to that. So yes, I think that would be really worthwhile, and I think it was a good call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, just members, are we content that to action the rest of the items in the correspondence as set out in the cover sheet? Agreed?
Agreed.
Then item 17, Chairman's business. You'll be glad to know there's no business. Agenda item 18 is an item just under any other business, and it's really something I think that we have covered in the past, but it's to get an update on how the Troubles Permanent Disablement Payment Scheme is progressing, and how now the fact that it's been open for applications for over 4 months, and if members are agreeable to request an update on the implementation of the scheme from the Department of Justice, the President of the Board, Capita, and the representatives of the victims groups, including the number of applications received, dealt with, how the process is operating, and any other issues that have arisen, and how those have been dealt with. Agreed? Any other business any member wants to raise? No. That brings us to item agenda 19, is the date and time, place of the next meeting. Next meeting of the Justice Committee will take place on Monday the 17th at 9:30 a.m. in room 30 in Parliament Buildings. And just to remind members, if you could confirm to Christine your availability, that would be very much appreciated. Okay, members, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your help to carry out today's business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Senate Chamber, programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber, programme